By way of preface, I'm just going to, as you get the handout in your hand, I just want to just give a little foundation for the topic and the direction that we'll be going for the next few moments. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and you can hold your applause. And I grew up in a predominantly African-American community in the municipalities of North County of St. Louis called Wellston. Wellston was a community of about 4,000 people. In the smaller part of the county, St. Louis is separated into municipalities and then the bigger city. But there are all these little hamlets, these little dots. Kinloch, Pine Lawn, University City, and then there's Wellston. And Wellston was a place of community, of family, of a place actually where I hadn't been very far from Wellston for the better part of my life, because everything I needed was there. Everything. So all the people I cared about were there. All the teachers, the friends, the family, the shopping, churches, everything right there. But there was a larger community out there somewhere. You know that song, Somewhere Out There? You know, so there was all this somewhere out there. But I didn't care about somewhere out there. All I cared about was Wellston, because that's all I needed to care about. And as I began to think over the course of my life, I'm at 58 now, I started thinking, did we have any Hispanic or Latino people in Wellston? And the answer was no. Did we have any Native American people that I knew of in Wellston? Once again, the answer was no. Did we have anyone from an Asian community in Wellston? And the answer was yes. We had these corner fried rice kitchens, and we had several in Wellston, and we would frequent those kitchens for a small box of inexpensive fried rice or noodles or whatever. We never asked them how their day was going. They never asked us how our day was going. We just made a financial exchange in those relationships, and life went on. And so over the course of my life, I started to think, man, how did I get a sense? How did I learn? How did I get what I call a perspective of value for people who were not from Wellston? How did I know who they were? How did I know anything about them? Now, of course, there were people who were, you could say, Caucasian or white in St. Louis, but I didn't know any of them. But figured one day I might. But I did have some help. My mom, in between jobs, okay, she'd come home about 2:30, and she'd come home and she'd plop down on the couch and she'd veg out before she went to her next cleaning job. And she would turn on the television, and I would get to watch Days of Our Lives. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? Huh? Because as I looked at the screen, there were people on the screen that were not from Wellston. But I did know that there were some in St. Louis like the people on the screen. And so I began to learn about these people from Days of Our Lives. Isn't that beautiful? And so I say that to say, as we begin this conversation about finding common ground, maybe, just maybe, there's somebody in the room here who kind of grew up maybe like me, in a sense of cultural isolation, around people who they felt very comfortable with, because there was no need to care about anybody else. And now, as we are adults, and as we begin to think about this whole diversity thing and inclusion thing and all this, how do we come to grips with the fact that maybe, just maybe, the information that we have received, the information we have gained, right or wrong, may not give us the best perspective of value for people who might be different than us? So many of you have said, and many of you have heard. If you have children, you told your kids, and maybe someone told you, don't talk to strangers. Anybody? Huh? Now, why do we say that? Well, we would say, you would say to me that, John, we probably say that because it's a protection mechanism, right? Huh? We're leery of people who are not from where we're from. And we want to make sure our kids don't venture into those unseemly environs, if you will. Okay? Don't talk to strangers. And just think about this, and you've done this before. And I got a 2-year-old grandson. And what happens is he doesn't spend a whole lot of time with my wife and I, at least not initially. And so for all intents and purposes, we were strangers. He spent all the time with my daughter and my son-in-law. And so when he would come to the house, they would want him to hug us and to love us and to do all these things. But how could he? When for all intents and purposes, like everybody else, we were strangers. And you know what happens when parents do to kids? They'll tell them don't talk to strangers, and then they'll get around a bunch of strangers and go, okay, Billy, go ahead. Hug them. Love on them. And the kid, cowers behind the back leg of mom or dad. Well, what do we expect? And then the question becomes, as that child moves from infancy into adolescence and then into adulthood, at what point in time and what institutions help this child to understand that everybody, well, not that everybody's not a stranger still, but at what point do we become more familiar? So therein lies the challenge. Here you are working with this diverse group of people. Here we all are living in this increasingly growing city of Lincoln, Nebraska. Many of you who are here for a long time, you realize that Lincoln has changed, for better or for worse, depending on your perspective. Okay? But are these folks strangers? Are they strangers? And if they are strangers, how do they become familiar? So therein is the journey, my friends, of what I call finding common ground. Because what I realize about myself is that I'm still, here it is, friends, a work in progress. So I do some preaching. So I usually say in my pulpit, do I have a witness out there? Do I have someone who can connect with what I just said? We're still yet a work in progress. We've not arrived. And if you have arrived, come up and talk to me during the break, because I'd like to know how you did it. Okay? And so let's jump into the packet. I got a lot of information and not a whole lot of time, and I'm sorry about that, but hey, that's just how I do it. I'd rather give you something to take home and think about and talk about than to just leave it on the table. All right? So let's jump right in. Let me first start with the definition of finding common ground. Again, knowing the backdrop, maybe some of you say, well, John, I'm from a very diverse place. Maybe I'm from a military family. I traveled a lot. We got to know a whole lot of people, on and on and on. Well, that's just not my story. I live here in Nebraska and have for the last 28 years, and I find that most places where I go, where I don't have a white helmet with a red N on it, I'm a stranger. But what I have found is that where I have my red shirt with my red N, and I'm walking with a group of people who don't look like me, guess what? I'm not a stranger. I'm familiar. Okay? And so folks will talk to me even though they don't know me, because they have connected with something that's what? Familiar. Okay? And so when we talk about finding common ground, what do? We talk about a willing and strategic coming together. The first part of it, as we jump across the line toward that which is maybe uncomfortable and unfamiliar from us, is the question is, are we willing? Are we willing? Are we willing to connect and become familiar with that which is most unfamiliar to us most of the time? We've been learned and we've taught, don't talk to strangers. The question is, are the people, even as we've moved into adulthood, are there still a lot of strangers in our lives? Do we lapse toward those, again, still, who are the most comfortable for us all the time? And then when we encounter people who, for all intents and purposes, who are strangers, how do we deal with that? How do we deal with that? Particularly if we're providing services for them. So again, that willing and strategic coming together of multiple parties, that's more than one person, obviously. But listen to this, even those in opposition, is it possible that people who may not like each other can find a way to work together? It's true. Why? Because they are working together for a result that is mutually satisfying and beneficial to all involved. So I may not like you, but you know what? I know what the end game is. Okay? Crooks can find a way to work together if indeed the end game is going to benefit them. Gang members can do it. Huh? They can do it. And so we start, first of all, with a simple question. are we willing? And then secondly, how do we navigate the process strategically, purposefully, to become more familiar and less strangers? Okay, that's the journey that we're on this morning. So where do we start? We start with the fact that most organizations, hopefully, have some foundation. And that foundation is grounded in these three things. And maybe at least one of them most of the time. The first of those is a vision, the why of the organization. And how many of you are interested in why you do certain things? Somebody says, well, we're going to do this. And a lot of kids want to know, well, why? Anybody got an inquisitive child who always wants to know why? Were you that inquisitive child? I see some faces here going, that was me. I always want to know why. I want to know why. And why? And let me just throw it out there. Why is it important to know why? If you would give me some response. Why is it important to know why?
So there's meaning.
Okay, so meaning. So the why may be unfamiliar until we can connect with the fact that there's some purpose in the why. I travel this country with companies all the time, and what happens all the time is technology, of course, filters into the organization, and technology filtered in here some way. So they'll throw out a bunch of iPads to a bunch of 60-year-old white men. Or older. Say, okay, now this is what you're going to be using to help your order system. And the guy pulls out a notepad out of the back of his pocket going, well, this is the way I've been doing it for the last 45 years. We'll turn this thing off, by the way. Or they'll give them these cell phones and say, okay, this is your new sales mechanism. Huh? And the guy starts stuttering and stammering, doing the Porky Pig. What am I supposed to do with this? Well, take your orders. Serve your clients. Text them. What? What's a text? And so we want to know why. And so people oftentimes, and that's what I tell people in leadership, if you want to get your people on board, at best as you can, tell them why. Tell them why. Also, the whole idea of the what, the how, the what, the who, and the how. That's our identity. And I would dare say, if you can be clear about what your identity is, then we can move forward. We know who we are, and we know what we do, and we know why we do it. But the other thing that's important is our sense of values. Those are the uncompromising, non-negotiables that guide us from day to day. And what's interesting, friends, is that even if people know these things, the reasons why we often get off track is we take our eyes off of this. And we start thinking, well, I'm out here doing the work, I'm out here doing this, I'm out here doing that, and I know why I'm doing it. They don't look at this. They stop looking at it. Anybody got the mission up in their office? The statement for the health department? The purpose statement? I'm sure you woke up at 7 o'clock this morning before you read the newspaper and said, let me look at the health department mission statement. You mean you didn't do that? Okay. Well, guess what? You're going to look at it now. There we go. Look at it on your, I think you have it there. You should have it on your page. I think I provided it for you, just in case you didn't look at it this morning. And I'm a person who loves words, and so that's why I highlighted these words in red, because I want us to kind of dissect this for just a quick second, because it is the thing that you have said to the citizens of this city and county about who you are. This is your identity for the most part. This is your promise. And so it says here, the mission is to protect and promote the public's health. Now, that sounds good in general, in an abstract way. But can anybody explain to me what that really means? To protect and promote the public's health? Now, I should be getting all kind of hands and comments here. Okay? Because this is not my mission statement. It's yours. Okay? So what are we talking about when we talk about this whole idea of protecting and promoting the public's health? Anybody? Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Every person in here at some point in time has done an activity which links their job to those mission statement words.
Okay.
So they should know. Posted throughout our department.
Okay.
Places, and we've been working for 3 years to make sure everybody knows our mission. But protect means to protect people from things like environmental hazards, like air quality problems or food safety problems. In my world, environmental health.
Well, I love those sanitation reports in the newspaper about the restaurants and all that stuff. Man, that's like mug shots in the Lincoln Journal-Star. Man, after I look at the mug shots, I go right to the restaurant thing going, oh no, are you serious? Mice droppings? I ate there last week. Are you serious? Birds? Oh my God. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And so I say that to say, friends, that once again, this is and what should be, here it is, familiar to you. This should not be strange. And so this should activate us to that point of, we'll talk about the diversity part of it, but this should be our activator relative to what we're all about. Okay, but not only that, we work with our partners, and again, that means we are in a collaborative mode. We're not just doing it ourselves. We have people who we trust are collaborating and cooperating with us to help us accomplish what it is we're trying to. Am I right about this? All right. To assure a healthy community for the residents of Lincoln and Lancaster County. Sounds good, doesn't it? On paper. But the simple truth is you all have to live it. You have to live it and actualize it and realize it every single day. And so that means, for all intents and purposes, like I said earlier, that you have made a promise. That's how I consider it. This is your promise to me as Joe citizen of the city of Lincoln in Lancaster County. Now, every organization makes promises. Now, those promises are internal promises. So let me just ask you quickly. When you think about the promise that the Lincoln and Lancaster County Health Department has made to you, first internal, let's start internal. What is the promise that you expect every day, every week, every month from this organization, from this city and this county relative to your existence in this organization? What's the promise that's made to you? Yeah, you expect to get paid. This isn't the United Way, right? Okay. So everybody expects a check, right? Okay, you expect. Okay. So you expect to get paid, right? Anything else? Huh? Okay, benefits? Okay. Benefits. Come on.
Safe work environment.
Safe work environment. Okay. And that also, that safe work environment has a dual dimension. Of course, that's the physical safety that we need, right? So if given the opportunity that somebody might get hurt in their work, we want to make sure that they're lifting correctly and doing all that kind of stuff. But we're also expecting, here it is, friends, an emotional safety as well. Here's an old saying I just made up. Life happens. You caught that, didn't you? Life happens. And so you all look so good and beautiful here at 9 o'clock in the morning on a Monday morning. But you know what? Before you got here, life was life. Okay? And we can't see what's behind the eyeballs, what's behind the cerebellum here. We don't know what your life was like before you got here. And so say, for instance, something was awry, something emotional happened. Say you got some bad news and now you're coming to work to fulfill the mission statement and you need somebody to talk to. And you pull somebody off to the side, you pull Stacy off to the side or whomever and say, Stacy, listen, on the way to work, thus and so. And so Stacy just listens. And that's because that's what you need in that moment. You don't need a fixer. You just need somebody to hear you. Because if you don't get this out, it's going to affect how you do everything else the rest of the day. Now, here's a question from me to you. Do you expect the conversation you just had with Stacy to be heard in the break room in the next 5 minutes?
No.
Why not?
It's confidential.
Yeah, it was confidential. And so we want that safety that if I do expose myself, ooh, don't say expose myself. If I do show some vulnerability, how about it? Can I say that? Some vulnerability. Oh boy, you gotta watch, man. I'm crazy. Think before you speak. You knew what I was talking about. If you do show some vulnerability, you expect that vulnerability to be held in confidence. Am I right about that this morning? Okay, so we want not just the physical safety, we want the emotional safety as well. Any other promises before we get to the external? I could add some now. I got the marker right here. All right. How about respect? Yeah, can I put that there? How about support? How about the tools to do my job? Huh? Good stuff? All right. So that's just what you expect. But the flip side of that, friends, okay, those are internal, is that you have made what I call external promises. These are the promises made to the folks out there, the people you work for, the people who read those reports, okay, about the droppings. Ooh, why did I bring that up? Okay. All right. So here it is. What can they or we expect as a promise from you?
We'll treat them with respect.
Okay, so respect again from you to me, right? Okay. Come on. Yes, sir. Consistency. Oh, watch it now. Now you get in my notes. That may be the word of the day, because that's what we're lacking. We're lacking in many instances consistency. We'll talk about that. Somebody said quality. Okay, what kind of quality?
Whatever product we put out there, whether it be,
Average, mediocre.
high.
I'm looking for an adjective.
Yep.
High quality?
Yep.
Okay, there we go. Because we know what low quality looks like, doesn't it? Uh-huh. We go to restaurants, has quality in our lives increased or decreased across the board as we get services from various and sundry places? Kind of ebbs and flows, doesn't it? What happens when we get bad quality? Do we go back? What happens when we get superior and excellent quality? And not only do we go back, we tell other people because we want them to experience it, well, unless it's a good place we like to go. No, okay. All right, anyway. Any more promises?
Timely.
Okay. Okay, we want our stuff to be timely. Want to be prompt. Come on.
Confidential.
Oh, okay. Oh, boy, that's big time, isn't it? We need that. More prompt. This list may well be longer than this list. Promises from you to the citizens of Lincoln and Lancaster County. Come on.
Fair.
Okay. Sense of, and I'm just going to put the word equity here because, people oftentimes in the work I get to do say, Mr. Harris, that's just not fair. Well, you can treat people fairly. That doesn't mean you're treating everybody the same. You understand where I'm going with that? Just because you're treating somebody differently does not mean you're not treating them fairly. Okay? And also, of course, on this side, we want some support. We want to make sure everything's safe and so forth. I'm going to add one word that is often overlooked in the list of external promises. And that word, friends, is professionalism. So the question for me to you is, when was the last time there was a session like this, a 1 hour, 2 hour, half hour, 15-minute, 5-hour conversation about what it means to be a professional? Well, I'll just cut it to the quick here. Most times it does not exist. And then the question then becomes, how do we understand what that means? Because professionalism is demonstrated or manifests itself in the way what we say, what we do, even the way we look, how we address people, the whole deal. Now, let me just say what I mean. Often, if you're from a place, and maybe like me again, if you go back, I grew up where, when my dad was in the nursing home, one of the biggest problems I had with what was happening there was that he was a pastor. He was a person in the community back in St. Louis. And I walked in one day, and the young lady who was working with him would call him Gene. Gene. That's his first name, Eugene. And she'd come in like he was familiar. But when I realized that, I grew up in a place in a time where your kids couldn't call adults by their first name. Anybody? Yeah. And so I was really taken aback by the fact that she was referring to him as Gene. And I said to her, excuse me, ma'am, my dad is a very well-respected person, and I would appreciate it if you'd call him Pastor Harris as opposed to Gene. And I understand what was going on there. Don't get me wrong. I understand that there's a sense of comfort and familiarity that they're trying to get with the patients. But culturally, for me, I was like, it showed me a lack of respect. So he deserves at this latter part of his life to maintain the dignity of his profession. So I would appreciate if you would just refer to him as Pastor Harris or Elder Harris or Reverend Harris, whatever one, but not Gene. The people who call it Gene, as a matter of fact, nobody called him Gene. Nobody. Eugene, Mr. Harris, Pastor Harris, but nobody called him Gene. And so this whole idea of professionalism suggests, is that a promise? Let me just ask you, is that a promise that you can make to the citizens of Lincoln and Lancaster County to be a professional? Do you always get back kind words that you give people in this line of work? Do you always get kind words back? So the question then becomes, if I'm giving out kindness and I'm getting back unkindness, do I maintain my professionalism or do I give them back what they're giving me? Tit for tat kind of thing. So I just want to lay out there this word, professionalism, as something to think about. Okay? Let's push forward. And then the question then becomes, what does success look like when we keep our promises? Well, guess what? The citizens are happy. Work is getting done. On this side, people are staying and not leaving. Our retention is working well. All of that's happening because what? We're more than just employees for Lincoln and Lancaster County. Here it is, friends. We're promise keepers. And I would challenge you to be that every single day. Let's start after this session is over. Or let's continue. Now, anybody here been to Scotts Bluff? Willing to admit it? Talking about diversity now. I was out there in 1992, first and only trip. And I was out there doing some workshop. I'm doing a workshop just like I am here today. And I learned a great diversity lesson in Scotts Bluff, Nebraska that I'd like to share with you today. Okay? Now, let me just go out on a limb here. Not very many African Americans out in Scotts Bluff, Nebraska. I know I'm out on a limb, but not a whole lot of the brothers out there in Scotts Bluff, Nebraska. There's brothers, but not brothers. Okay? And so I was out there doing a workshop, and I realized that in Scotts Bluff, Nebraska, there is a great sense of culture. Put it down. You see it there on your page. Culture. Now, what is culture? Culture is everything that makes us who we are, and we all have culture. We all have culture. Every single body, every person in this room has some semblance of culture. Okay? Whether it's the things you eat, the things you do, the traditions you have, the language you speak, your native language, another language, we all have it. Culture. Okay? Let me just, I'll tell you later about the culture I'm going to talk about. So I'm out there and I'm walking through the gymnasium, and there's 3 boys following me throughout the gymnasium. That's right. 2 little white boys, 1 little Latino boy, Mexican boy, following me throughout the gymnasium as I'm waiting between sessions. And I'm curious, why are they following me? Everywhere I go, they go. And so what I realized is that culture provides a perspective. Perspective. Our culture provides us with a way we see things. And guess what? In Wellston, the only way I was going to see things was from my young African-American isolated eyes. Everything else was strange. Everything else. And wouldn't it be interesting for me to be shipped out of Wellston as a guinea pig experiment to a Catholic, all-male, wealthy private school? That's right. 8th grade, a teacher in Wellston wanted to see if a kid from the hood could make it in a private school to get a better education. So they took me and another young lady, shipped us out of the community to this, some 25 miles from home, into this private school environment to see if I could make it, see if I could be successful, to see if I could graduate, to see if I could, whatever. Well, I'm standing here today because I was successful, but it was a cultural shock. First of all, there was no girls there. That was probably the biggest shock. It was all male, not co-ed. But here's the crazy thing. You know all that Days of Our Lives stuff I was watching? It actually worked. Because when I got out to the wealthy private school, they were just like the people on Days of Our Lives. Stop it. Okay, stop it. Culture provides us with a perspective. So, but here's the interesting thing, and remember what I said earlier. The question isn't, do I have a perspective? The question is, depending on who's strange and who's familiar, do I have a perspective of value? Now, here's what's happening in Scotts Bluff. Those 3 boys were following me. And why were they following me? Because they thought I was somebody important, other than John Harris. That's right. They thought they had encountered a celebrity. Huh? And you say, well, what celebrity? Well, I'll tell you in a second. So they were following me, and they thought there was a celebrity in their midst, and they were tracking him. That's right. And because not only does culture give us a perspective, hopefully if that perspective is a perspective of value, you want to get close to the person that you're valuing. You say, well, John, who was it? Who was that celebrity that they thought you were? Let me diffuse this right now. It wasn't Al Roker, okay? It wasn't Al Roker from NBC. Okay, stop it right now. Because I have gotten that in the airport. Al Roker? I'm much better looking than Al Roker. Are you kidding me? I wanted to punch the person. I mean, they really thought, hey, Al Roker. I'm like, Al Roker, are you kidding? You know who they thought I was? These kids. Now, again, think about it. 1992, Scottsbluff, Nebraska. What was happening in the world in 1992? What was happening was that it was time for the Olympics. Huh? And that was the first time NBA players got to play the Olympics. And the kid walked up to me and said, you're Magic Johnson and we want your autograph. That's right. That's exactly what he said. And I'm looking at him going, Magic Johnson? For those of you who remember, I just was excited that he hadn't thought I was JJ from Good Times. Some of you will understand what that means. Dynamite. So at least I could handle Magic Johnson. And just by way of identification, let me just take you back to back in the day. Oh, that's yours truly right there. Look at that. Huh? What's the number? What's the shoes? Converse. The high socks, the whole deal. And look at this guy, totally confused right here on the no-look pass. Totally confused. So all my life, all my young life, I played ball. I wanted to be Magic. I wanted somebody to identify me as Magic Johnson. So I get old, I get dumpy, I get to Scottsbluff, and guess what happens? But what does it mean? It means that even in that culturally isolated place like Scottsbluff, or even in St. Louis where I was, we can get information, right? That does not keep us from information. The question is, does that information provide us with something that might help us to be more familiar than detached? And so these young boys took the information that they got, and they made a very interesting Aristotelian philosophical equation. Let me give it to you. Magic Johnson is black. Man in front of us is black. Man in front of us is Magic Johnson. Huh? That's how they did it. They just put it together simply. But what they figured out was that Magic Johnson was a celebrity. We see him as a person of value, and we're going to get close to him. Because that's what we do. We get close to that which we value. The question is, what do we value? Or why do we not value certain people from different places? I didn't value Latinos in Wellston because we didn't have any there. Didn't know anything about them. No Native Americans, the very few Asians, and everybody else. Didn't need to know them and didn't care because my life was only Wellston. And as I began to venture out, thank goodness for the private school. Thank goodness for a college education. Thank goodness for a professional life that has now taken me all over this country and beyond to learn more about different things. And now I'm closer to valuing people at a higher level, and people are less strangers and more familiar because of exposure. And here it is, friends, information that's real from real engagement. Okay? Real engagement. So these kids, now here's the question. $64,000. John, come on. Did you sign Magic Johnson's name for those little boys? Did you do that? What you think? You doggone right I did. You doggone right I did. After a bit of an explanation, I had a little explanation. I told him that I wasn't Magic Johnson. And the kid, they were kind of disappointed. And the one kid just said, well, would you sign it anyway? Yeah. I mean, they had taken all that time to case, follow me around. They figured might as well get an autograph, All right. We press forward. Oh, I did. Yeah. One of the things about life for us, and again, I want to take diversity in a couple of directions. Oftentimes, it's mostly put in the race, ethnicity category. I want to stretch it into another dimension. And let's stay with perception for just a minute. Now, I know some people in this room here, as we think about the people around you. Okay, two ways we perceive the world. One of those ways is concrete. And I imagine there's some people in the room who say, John, just cut to the chase. Just give me the facts, the details. Do I have anybody in the room like that? Come on, don't be ashamed. Be proud of your concreteness. Huh? So you don't have a whole lot of tolerance for these people, storytellers, those who venture into the abstract. Huh? What's your name, sir? William? Yeah, William raised his hand as one of the concrete people. So William and I would have a very interesting relationship because I got to tell William a story. William knows for the next 10 minutes, John's going to tell him a story. He asks him a simple question, but guess what? He ain't going to get no simple answer. William's going to have to take the road of the story. Now, William might say, come on, John, I'm going to give you 5 minutes on this story. Now you got to cut to the chase. And so because William and I are compromising culturally, okay, I'm going to cut the 10-minute story to a 5-minute story, and then we can get to it. So what we realize, friends, in the experience of diversity is that people perceive the world as concrete or abstract. But also, we order the world differently as well. Take a look. Some people order the world. Anybody like this, where you have everything in a place like that? Huh? You got a place for everything in a place. Come on, don't be shy. You are sequential in your process. Does your desk look like orderly? Everything where it should be? So when you need a stapler, you know exactly where it is. As opposed to the rest of us, we're random. Huh? Now, I have two daughters, Shannon and Joanna. Joanna is sequential. She needs a pink shirt, blouse, whatever. She goes into the drawer. There's blue. There's whatever. There's pink. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Okay. Shannon, on the other hand, oh, is this going to be on video? Doggone it. It's going to be in-house, right? Yes. Thank you, Stacey. Shannon needs a pink shirt. She looks in the pile of shirts. Okay. Oh, pink. Whoop. Oh. Now, you got kids like that, don't you? Okay. But what it says to us is that there are different kind of people in the world, right? People who perceive the world differently and people who order the world differently. Why? Because that's diversity. Diversity can be our greatest strength, but it also can be our greatest challenge if we don't manage it and navigate it correctly. But what that means oftentimes, friends, is we have to confront ourselves more than anything. And I'm sure there are people in the room who are sequential and there are people who are random. Just understand that as you're talking to people and say that you realize that they are a concrete person. Well, you realize you have to give them concrete answers. Okay? They get frustrated if you start meandering. By the same token, people who are abstract, they get frustrated if all you want are the details. Because you have to put some meat on the skeleton. Before I give you the details, I have to tell you how we've gotten to this place. Well, I want to hear that. I just want Well, you got to hear it. Because now that'll help you understand why we are where we are. Okay? And so you get it, right? There are different people in the world. And here's a news flash. Everybody's not like you. I know that's rocket science here. Everybody doesn't perceive the world, and everybody doesn't order the world the way you do. Now, that can create some frustration for you, or you can get excited about it. I would dare say it's the former and not the latter, okay, for most people. All right? So I just want to say to you, diversity has many dimensions, okay? And this is one of those dimensions as we begin to think about it in earnest, okay? So here's a question. Let's stay with perception for just a moment. Everybody's looking at the same thing, right? Okay? I want to give you 6 identities to respond to this stimulus. Okay? So let's say first, you are a police officer. What do you see? What do you see? What does this mean to you as a police officer?
Junk car.
A junk car. Okay. Anything we think we need to do with it? Yeah. Call a tow truck. It's abandoned. Okay. It's right in front of a building. You know, it might belong to somebody. Okay. How about a bank robber? Well, look at those tires. Where you think you're going? So when the cops get there, just put the handcuffs on yourself. Okay. Okay. Bank robber. What this means is 5 to 10 is what this means. Okay. How about a car restore? A little spackle and some Rust-Oleum. You might get $1,500 out of this number. Isn't it interesting? Great potential. How about a single parent? If it runs. If it runs. Hopefully it's not a money pit. But though that person in need of transportation might find it helpful, beneficial for a time. Okay. How about prom date? How about last date? Huh? Yeah, you see somebody, listen, you pull up in that, the young lady asks the young man, do I need a tetanus shot? Because I see a lot of rust on this number here. And lastly, how about a homeless person? Potential. A lot of potential, huh? Yeah, protection. So here's the question. What's the lesson here? We all looked at the exact same thing. Yeah. Yeah. And it depends on where you're standing. And sometimes for us friends, it may well be that we might need to change our vantage point to be able to see things the way they really are. Huh? We're looking this way. Maybe we need to turn just to be able to see it. But also understand that the fact that we all saw it differently doesn't mean that there's not necessarily any truth there. It just means that based on my background, based on my profession, based on the way I perceive it, this is what I see. And so diversity often means that when we see things from different perspectives, it might be possible, if we can dialogue, if we're willing, again, willing and strategic process, then we might come to an understanding that maybe there's a truth here that we have yet to uncover. We haven't looked under the engine. We don't know. Might be a wealthy person's car for all we know. Okay. But understand, everybody comes at it with their eyes. You can't look through somebody else's eyes. That's the challenge. We talk about putting ourselves in somebody else's boots and all that kind of stuff. No. You can only see through your eyes, but you can try to understand where somebody else is coming from. Okay? Do you track? We're together? Together? Okay. All right, good stuff. Now, let's get real personal. Like I haven't been personal already. Okay. I want you to take a moment to write down for me, and then we'll share at the tables together, those people, things, entities, clubs, organizations that have helped shape your perspective. Those things that help you see the world the way you do. Okay? So what are those entities? What are those things? Friends, family, school, whatever. What are the things that have helped shape who you are today, to see the world the way you do? What has impacted you, influenced you, culturally and otherwise? Take a moment and write those down on that sheet, because you're going to share them with each other at the table. Okay? I'm going to begin just to put some things up on the screen here that you may have put down on your paper. Okay, or you're still putting down. I have family on my list. Okay, anybody got family? Okay. Friends also impacted me, shaped. Education, schooling, teachers, all of that impacted. Faith has been an important part of my life. I knew 2 things growing up, that I was going to church and I was going to school. Everything else was up in the air. Okay. And that my mom would provide, or our folks would provide food for us. Sports has been a critical part of my life, along with TV and films, of course, Days of Our Lives, you know all about that. And lastly, experiences. Life experiences have impacted me. So as you have written down some of the things on your list, I want you to think, take one of those things, one of the things you wrote down, and put specifically what that entity, that organization, those individuals, how they actually help shape who you are. Just pick one of them, because that's what you're going to share with everybody else at the table. Pick one of them, and what contribution did they make to who you are and how you see the world and how you live your life and so forth. So take a moment, pick one of those and write that down. What lesson did you get from them? And so we're going to take, after everyone's done that, we're going to take the next few minutes and you're going to share the things on your page and that one specific thing with everybody at the table. We're moving from stranger to what? Familiar. The simple truth is we can work with all these folks and not really know much about them. Well, we're going full exposure here right now. Full disclosure right now. Okay? So exposure is on my mind for some reason. I'm going to stick with disclosure. How about that? All right. So let's take the next 8 minutes, which means you're going to talk quickly. I'll tell you what, don't worry about all the things on, just go specifically to the one that has impacted you. Okay? And let's just share that with everybody at the table. Okay? Right now. As we venture back, that was an hour. That was an hour. Probably, hopefully a quick hour. But we have another quick hour coming up. And I have some other things I want you to do at your tables. But let me, as we jump back in, let me just ask you, as you're working together at your tables, what are some of the things you heard at your table from other people that strike you as helpful to know more about them? Something strange or peculiar that you thought was interesting, or something interesting that you heard as you conversed together? Anybody? I was hearing this conversation about James Bond. What was that about? James Bond shaped him. Okay, we're going to talk about this for the next 15 minutes right now. Can we hear the story? No, he doesn't know. Now let's talk about diversity for just a moment. All of us from various and sundry eras have our own favorite James Bond. Huh? So if you like James Bond, all right, there's some Sean Connery, James Bond folks. Okay, there's some Roger Moore, James Bond folks. Okay, who am I missing? Now, who's Timothy Dalton? Anybody like Timothy Dalton as James Bond? Roger Moore? I said Roger Moore. How about the new guy? What's the new guy? What's his name? Not Roger Craig. Daniel Craig. Anybody like Daniel Craig? Pierce Brosnan. We forgot about Pierce. That's right. How can you forget about Pierce Brosnan? In anything. Yeah. It's like when I talk to people about one of my topics for my workshop is called Achieving Mission Impossible. And I talk about the old Mission Impossible. With Peter Graves and Martin Landau. And they go, no, what about Tom Cruise? I said, that's not Mission Impossible. Anyway, anybody else find anything interesting in the conversation that you had at your table? Hopefully you did. Okay, hopefully. Not so much? Yes, sir. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I found, I'm going to use your story, William. William grew up in a small town in Ohio, about 1,500 people, predominantly white. And when he joined the military, that's when he was really exposed to diversity.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. There are those entities in our world that can help us to move from stranger to familiar. And the military is definitely one of them. Okay, where you now have to work collectively and cooperatively with people from all walks of life. Do they become always your best friends and so forth? But you got to do it. You got to do it. You had your hand raised here.
Yeah, I found it interesting. Connie shared that with her family, her mom, when she would write checks, she would write her dad's name, Mrs. Herbert Gruwell, instead of her name because she didn't have her information on checking.
Isn't that interesting? Okay. And some people, it's interesting when people come to Lincoln, whether they come to Lincoln from a big city and then Lincoln becomes a small town, or they come from a small town and Lincoln is a big city. Huh? And so I remember as I drive across Nebraska, how people park down the middle of the street, diagonal. I'm going, oh boy, that'd be nice, but you better park a certain way. Okay. and so forth. All right, that's another whole story. Thank you all for what you've done thus far. Now, I have another quick exercise. There's an extra page on your table, and you'll see it because it looks like this. You think they're paying me to do all the talking, all the work here? No, that's what you're here for. The idea here is as we expand our understanding about diversity, we start with ourselves. And we start with this idea that oftentimes we think of diversity as just the whole idea of difference. The way you're different than the way I'm different. But I want to take it another direction. What we don't talk as much about is how we are the same, or what the things we have in common. And so I want to do that for just a moment here. In the middle of this page, as you see here, we have 3 lines. And those 3 lines will help you as you converse about the 3 things everybody at your table has in common. Now, let me give you a bit of rules here. The simple mantra that I'm going to give you is don't take the easy way out. Okay, so nothing related to Nebraska is involved. Okay, we're throwing that out right now. Okay, so I'm making you work here because that's what we need to do to find common ground. It's not about always taking the easy way out. It's about doing the work that figures out, because we got some, I imagine here we have some people from different countries. Okay? And what we find out culturally is if we talk long enough, we'll find out what we have in common. That's the work we have to do. Even if you're from the same place, everybody's not exactly the same. So that's what this middle circle is. We're going to take a few moments to start there in the middle. Then, as you look on the outside, we'll put everybody's name on the outside spoke, depending on how many people you have at your table, and that person will tell you the one thing about them that's uniquely different than the other people in the group. So what am I saying? There's something about him that is uniquely different than him. Well, actually, than all the rest of them. That's what makes him so special.
I'm skinnier than him.
You're skinnier than him. Yeah. But not all the others.
No.
But not all the others. Yeah. So it has to be something about you that none of the rest of them can say about themselves.
Correct.
Okay. You tracking with me? It's the thing you can say that nobody else in your group can say about them. That's what makes you special to the group. That's what provides the perspective that only you can provide. Huh? And so first we work on the inside. So we're going to take the first, 10 minutes on the inside circle, or as long as it takes you to fill in those 3 lines. All right? Now, again, don't take the easy way out. Work at this. Ask about family. Ask about friends. Ask about school. Ask about where you've traveled. Ask about the things that might help us to find some commonality. And then let's work on that uniqueness on the outside. All right, if you need some help, I'll come to your table. Let's go. Ask about travel. Ask about experiences. Ask about education. Ask about siblings. Ask about songs, languages, foods. So the thing you put on that line is the thing that only you can say about yourself. Nobody else has that quality. Nobody else. It's your unique difference and perspective. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to do this exercise because, first of all, it gives me a break. My motives. Secondly, because I think all too often in the workshops that I've done for all of these many years, it's one thing to come to a workshop on diversity and everybody comes in with their own kind of sense of what we're going to talk about and how you're going to feel about it and so on and so forth. And one of the things I want you to do is work at it, because that's what we must do. Depending on how we move from being strangers to more familiar, it's a process. And oftentimes, even when people, quote unquote, look alike, the misnomer is that they're alike. When in actuality, diversity doesn't matter. It's not what you look like, per se. It's about the things that we have in common. It's about the things that are uniquely different about us. And how do we come to an understanding of what those things are? Well, it happens in a conversation. It happens when we engage. It happens when we begin to get this perspective of value for one another. And so, though I was going to go around and give everybody an opportunity. I'm just going to have to kind of pick and choose those who really want to share. Who's just dying to share what's on their paper? You just got to tell everybody your similarities and your unique differences.
We had trouble telling each other.
Okay. All right. I do have a hand here. Give us what is the 3 things that you all have in common?
Okay, we actually came up with a few extra, but
Oh, some high achievers, huh? Okay.
out that all of us grew up in cities less than 75,000 people. And
Okay.
some of the simple ones were that we all work here at LSCHD. And we all speak English, although we do have Hader that speaks 3 languages with us.
Okay.
The rest of us all speak English, so that.
Hard work there, huh? Hard work. Hard work. All right. I want to hear someone's unique differences around the outside. This table right here.
We can do it.
Please.
Okay, you want everybody's unique?
Everybody, let's go from person to person. Give me the name and uniqueness.
Oh, I am Sophia, and I was fortunate to publish 2 books.
Oh. Okay. We'll talk about the sales table outside. Okay. Give me everybody else. Yeah. Give the report.
Anne was the proprietor of a worm circus.
Oh, who? Oh. You said worm, not warm. Worm circus.
We won't say
And see me afterwards. Worm circus. We'll have to talk about that. Yes. Go next.
Amy was huge into showing cattle.
Showing cattle. Okay.
Hewa speaks 4 languages. But
4.
uses to help others.
Okay.
Stacy had a baby at age 40, but she's only 41. So
Recently. Her and Diana Ross, huh?
and Alicia wanted to share with us how she sang at the county fair in a talent contest.
What did you sing?
At the Knox County Fair. Sorry.
I can't,
You don't even remember?
I don't remember.
I think you give us just a little.
No, I
It's scary.
But it was like, I have a little change in my pocket, going
Hey, Stacy, when we get the first Lancaster County Health talent show going on here. Got talent. We got talent here. Okay. So now I got to get somebody on this side. Somebody's got to share with me. And I want inside the circle. Inside the circle. Right here? Okay, right here. Right here inside the circle.
Okay, all of us here at the table have siblings.
Okay, we all have siblings.
We all enjoy cooking,
Cooking, okay.
and then we all have gone to college.
Everybody's gone to college. Okay. I want the unique differences on the outside. Oh, you said this is a struggle table.
Well, we got it.
You got those, huh?
She was our tough customer.
Okay. So who's going to report?
Beth's grandma,
She's a grandma.
no, Beth's
I am a
grandma.
grandma.
Beth's
one.
grandma was Native American.
Okay. Keep going.
Ron is married to a former member of the Communist Party.
Okay. Former member.
Former 6 months.
6.
To
Oh.
graduate high school, and then she said to hell with it.
Okay. No more Communist
She
Party.
still has her card.
Okay.
Mary is a back-to-back gold medalist in curling.
Gold medalist.
I said gold medalist.
In curling. You know the deal like that?
In the Nebraska.
Really?
Cornhusker games.
Get the heck out of here. No, stay. I mean, but really? Man, I am so honored. All right, and last but not least,
Let's see, Chris had a campsite that survived a bear attack.
Chris. How did we do this?
I just was sleeping. I didn't do anything.
Chris just played dead. He just slept right through the whole thing. Now, did you say what yours were?
And
Was?
when I was 8 years old, I got to sing with Johnny Cash.
What?
My dad was a rabid Johnny Cash fan.
Uh-huh.
And he was at the state fair long ago. And my dad knew a guy who helped him produce one of his records.
Uh-huh.
And so Dad was a big singer and had a band, and he wanted to take him tape. And so after the show at the state fair, he let my dad sing a song with him. And my
Wow.
little sister and I were like, we want to sing too. And so there's that song, Daddy Sang Bass.
Yeah, Mama sang tenor.
We would do that with our dad. And
Get
so
the heck out of
John
here.
had the guitar going, and he did the Daddy Sang Bass part and let us go, Mama sang tenor. So,
We got all kind of talent in this room here. Come on, give everybody a hand. Come on now. That's awesome. That's awesome. This is how we do it. But see, that's the great thing about what I get to do. Because I get to come into a room of strangers and become more familiar. Huh? Because of the engagement and the exposure, the opportunity to learn from one another. That's the thing we miss out on. And here it is, friends. That's the thing we take for granted from day to day. We see these people, many of you see each other all the time. And you do what you do. And you say, well, John, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to do a job, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I understand that. But the opportunity to know that there's somebody who's married to a former Communist Party member, where are you going to get that? Where are you going to get that? Where are you going to get that? Okay. All right. Keep going, John. All right. Let's keep moving. We have a couple more pages to deal with, and then one more exercise. All right? All right. So real quick, as we talk about finding common ground, you say, how do we start this process particularly? Well, we started, first of all, with this whole idea of what I call self-awareness. Take a look. Self-awareness. It starts with you. So oftentimes, listen, let me just tell you something. I know what's wrong with all of you. Okay? I know what your problems are. Problem is, when I look in the mirror, that's when I have a problem. Okay? What I realized after 25 years of doing this work is that I'm still learning. Every time I walk into a room, I hear something, I find that there's something more that helps me to know more about what I don't know. So I've been doing it for 25 years. And I realized, let me just, by full disclosure here, I realized that it starts, first of all, with examining my own prejudices. We'll talk about prejudices, uncovering stereotypes, understanding this whole sense of values. I realize that people have different values than I have, different beliefs. And sometimes that can be a tough place. Sometimes that can be a place of confrontation. And it can be a place of understanding, depending on how we go about it. Now, I understand everybody's not going to believe what I believe. And everybody's don't have the same values I have. Okay? Does that mean we can't respect each other in our differences? We can. Can we agree to disagree? We can. All right? And so diversity does not, I want you to hear this rightly. Diversity does not demand consensus. It does not demand that everybody agree on everything. But there's a way to go about it. There's respect we can have. And so I have to start with myself and being self-aware. I realize I'm from a place where there were different kinds of people. Certain people were not there. I had no use for them. I had no value for them because I wasn't exposed to them. I have been now. And now life is different. And so I start first with myself. Secondly, I start to build greater sense of knowledge. I realize now that there are people in this room who were not born in the United States, who are from other countries. The gentleman here speaks 4 languages, 3 languages, 4 languages over here, okay, and so on and so forth. And so what I've learned to do is understand that even in Nebraska, I can learn different things. I can stretch outside of my own culture into the culture of others. And matter of fact, if you all know, and many of you know well, Nebraska is a cultural state, very ethnically diverse, with Germans and Swedes and Russians and Czechs and so forth, all across this great state. Okay? Now, some people say, well, John, they're just white people. No! They're people with great culture and heritage and so forth. And they're very proud of it. You all been to some of these places? Anybody here been to Wilbur? Huh? You been to Wilbur doing Czech Fest? With the kolaches and all that stuff? Big time. You been out to Gothenburg with the Swedes out there? So don't tell me it's just a bunch of white folks with no Indians on the plains in Nebraska. Which people think. They ask me all the time. First of all, are there any black people in Nebraska? Yeah, me. Okay? And my wife and my kids. Are there any Indians out there? Like, are you crazy? But people think these things, don't they? And they say them out loud. They think this is still the wild, wild west, that there's still all this stuff going on, about what people think. And so one of the things I've learned, anybody ever been to Hebron, Nebraska? Willing to admit it? Okay? Yours truly was in Hebron, and I realized culture hit me square in the face in Hebron, Nebraska. I was there for around Thanksgiving time, and I had a meal. Everything was familiar. Turkey, dressing, the whole trimmings, all that stuff, everything familiar. Pies, familiar. Apple pie, cherry pie. Then I saw on the edge a nice little orange-looking brown crusted pie. And I'm thinking, hey, my mom's from Mississippi. My mom makes the best sweet potato pie. So I look at the pie and I go, wow, that looks like something I like. So they said, you want the apple pie? No. You want the cherry pie? No. Give me the orange pie. And so they gave me a piece of the pie. Put some of that Cool Whip stuff on it, handed it to me, and I gave me a fork, and I began to dive in. And I came to a quick realization. This wasn't my mama's pie. I had been duped. There was a conspiracy. Hoodwinked. This was not sweet potato pie. It looked familiar. And as you all know, it was pumpkin pie. Something I had never had in my life. Now, it was a different taste, different texture, and, being cordial, I ate it. But I realized that people, you can see something that looks exactly the same as what you're used to, and it actually be something very different. And so I ventured out. So I made sure that from this point on, I help myself when I go to eat at people's houses. All right? So the first thing I'm going to bring is some hot sauce. Folks don't season food right around here. You got to have some hot sauce. Secondly, some Lowry seasoning salt in my bag. Don't be offended. Don't be offended. I'm helping myself. Don't be surprised if you see somebody with those things. All right? But the challenge is here, as we begin to step outside of ourselves and the fact of our own self-awareness, we desire, here it is, friends, to know about others and the way people do things that are different than the way we do things. Doesn't mean necessarily they're wrong, they're just different. Okay? And what helps us then is we begin to acquire greater skills. Many of you let's go back real quick. Many of you are encountering clients and people in Lincoln of different cultures. We have more languages spoken in Lincoln now than we ever have had in the Lincoln Public Schools. All right? And so that means we have to assess, we have to adjust, and then we have to act. Did you hear it here? Assess, adjust, then act. Be careful not to act first before you assess and adjust. All right? So those 3 A's. Don't forget the 3 A's. Assess, adjust, and then act. Okay? Now, that we act because now we have, as we've ventured into this different skill set, we've opened ourselves up to finding common ground. Now we have different skills. Now we can move into different environs, if you will, with a greater sense of understanding and sensitivity. And let me add to both of those a greater sense of empathy. Empathy. All right? We have understanding because we have challenged ourselves. We've challenged the way we think. We've challenged the way we were brought up. And I'm not, again, be careful. I'm not saying it was wrong. It just may have been lacking some information here and there. Okay, lacking some information. And now we've filled in some gaps. We've put some meat on the skeleton, if you will. And now in order to keep our promises, and again, that's where it all goes back to. We're not just doing this. And Stacy hasn't just called me here so we can come here for 2 hours, start schmoozing each other, and then at the end, all stand up and sing "We Are the World." Okay? That's not what this is about. This is about the fact that you have made promises to the citizens of Lincoln and Lancaster County. This is about the fact that this community is becoming increasingly more diverse. This is about the fact that all of those diverse people need the same quality of services that you provide. And we have to figure out how to assess, how to adjust, and how to act in a way that helps us to fulfill our mission. That's the deal, okay? And so as we move down this road, we start first of all with self-awareness, and you ask yourselves, how aware am I? How aware do I need to become to be able to meet the standard of our mission? Okay? So Let's venture into this. Well, so why is it all important? Okay. When we talk about this whole idea of diversity, I'm just going to put this back on with you again. I've mentioned it, but I just want to put this up by way of definition. The similarities and differences. So when we talk about the diversity of our workplaces, once again, visible and invisible difference. Everything that's the same and different about us, we can't see. Visible and invisible. But I want you to know it encompasses race, sex and gender, ethnic group, age. Okay, anybody here deal with people of varying ages? Okay, the challenge of what that means. Okay, so as we assess, adjust, and act, how do we do that relative to people of different age groups? How about generations? Huh? So we have our silent generation, we have our baby boomers, okay? We have our millennials, we have our Gen Xers. How do we figure out how to navigate the fact that some people want to talk, some people want to text, some people want to email, some people want to text, some people want to text, some people want to text. And some of us folks are like, what about a conversation? Where did interpersonal communication go? Huh? You all know what I'm talking about. You call your kids, they don't call you back. You text them, they call you right back. I said, I'm going to turn off the phone, you'll call me. All right. We venture also into this whole idea of personality, learning styles. We talked about that relative to how do we perceive the world and how we order the world. That's just learning styles. We recognize in diversity that people process life differently. Some of you may be theory people. Give me a theory, I got it, let's go. Some of us are practical application people. We need to put our hands on it. We need to put our hands. You need to show me. If you show me, then I can do it and I can run with it. This is what I talk to teachers about. Every student is not the same. You have to be able to understand who you're working with and how to teach him or her rightly. How about the length of time we've been in a place? Some people feel a certain ownership in an organization because how long they've been there. Then some new folks come in with new and different ideas, and we've never done it that way. They're stuck in their tenure, in their time. Almost a warp, if you will. But the challenge here, how do we value both? How do we value the person that's been here, who has the experience, and how do we value the newcomer that comes in with all of this, their eyes wide open, and all these grandiose ideas about how to make things better? How do we value them both? And how do we help them learn to value each other in a way that helps us to keep our promises? So therein lies much of the challenge. Okay, I'll move past that. Now, 3 quick things as we get to our last exercise. All right. When we talk about finding common ground, we talk about it in these 3 dimensions for every organization. First of all, again, I mentioned the mission. This is who we are. This is the code. All right. This is who we are, and this is why we do what we do. And we should be mindful of that. As we think about diversity, we should stay true to the fact that we have a mission that is non-negotiable. You didn't write it, but it's what you have to fulfill. We have a culture about the way things should be, what those who work here can expect from us, and what those we serve can expect from us. All right? So it's all about the expectation. Is there an expectation in this organization every single day you come that we will be successful at the jobs we do? There's an expectation. There should be. Because nobody would want to work in a place where you come into your supervisor meeting and the first thing they say to you is, you know what, we suck. We're not going to get a thing done today. Matter of fact, I suck, you suck, this is terrible. What the heck are we doing here? Okay. Well, I'm resigning that day. I'm leaving. I'm out of here. We don't want that kind of culture. We want a culture with an expectation of success. But also we want, and many want, a community. A community. Why a community? Well, let me just ask you, what's so special about the communities that you're a part of? What are the characteristics that make communities such a beautiful thing to be a part of? Let me just ask you, what are the things that make communities so important to you? What do you get from the various and sundry communities that you are a part of? What do you get from them? Family, organization, church, synagogue, whatever. What do you get from that makes a community such a special place? Support? Belonging? Come on. camaraderie, acceptance, fellowship, trust, all of those things. Would that be great to have here? Are we there yet? Can we be better? Yes. So we can begin to build the kind of community that indeed provides that perspective of value, and then, of course, the kind of support that makes it the place where not only people want to come and but where people actually want to stay. Many organizations I deal with, high turnover, people coming in and out, revolving door. But we're trying to build communities where people not only want to come, but they have the kind of fellowship, kinship, acceptance, and so forth. Now, does that mean everybody's the same? Does that mean everybody thinks the exact same way? No, but we've learned how to share life together, even through many of our challenges. Huh? All right. So it says where we share life together and work cooperatively to ensure that we achieve our mission. And again, it always comes back to what we're trying to accomplish. All right, so a couple of questions. I got them down in the paper for you, and so I'm going to make this easy for you. So when you're thinking about common ground, moving forward, you ask yourself, particularly where there's a challenge, what are the real issues? If there is an issue, what's the issue? What is it that we're dealing with? Okay. I ask myself, what do I value? Because that's really what it comes down to sometimes. It's not the what that we often are arguing about or we have a conflict about. It's the how. Because you think we should do it differently than I do. The what is still the same. It's the how that we often have a problem with. I think we should do it this way. No, I think we should do it this way. How do we come to find some common ground? Because what I have to do now, I know what's important to me. I have to consider what's important to you. Why is it like this? What's important to the other person? What do we agree on? What are our differences? And can our differences be overcome? And lastly, the thing that probably should be at the top, what's the end game? What's the result we're looking for? Huh? So that's one of the things, because if it's all about my way or the highway, that's where we're going to continue to have problems. All right? And finding common ground, somebody has to give some ground to get to common ground. You hear that? Did you hear that? Sometimes you have to give some ground to get to common ground. It's the difference. Here's a little marriage counseling here. Is it more important to be right, or is it more important to be together? That's oftentimes the question you have to ask. Is it more important to be right, which I am most of the time? Yeah, she's back on the back going, no, you're not. You look like my wife. I can tell. Right? Stop it. Or is it more important to be together? Is it more important to have that cooperative working relationship moving forward? If it's all about just being right, well, we're going to be here a while. Okay. One more thing here, and I want a quick little ditty at the table here. I want you to take a moment at your table. When we think about finding common ground, what are the positive outcomes and obvious critical possibilities? The possibilities. If this department for this department and the citizens at large, if we take a serious effort at finding common ground. I want you to just take a few minutes to think about what are the positive benefits of what can happen here in this health department and for the citizens, because that's what we're serving, right? If indeed we can do a better job at finding common ground. So take about a few minutes, just talk together. What are the positive things, positive benefits for this organization? All right. Thank you. All right, appreciate it. All right, before we get to the flip side, let me just give you what everybody has come up with here as it relates to our positive outcomes. Again, this isn't just a schmooze session. All right? This is an opportunity for us to get some tangible stuff that we can actualize in real time. And so if we can indeed move in this direction, finding common ground, working at it, willing strategic process, we can provide better services, all right, at a high level. We can achieve our goals. We can improve community health and lifestyles. Just basic understanding. And guess what, friends? Where does that basic understanding start? Out there? Starts in here. It's how we respect and treat each other and how we show ourselves to be formidable in this endeavor. Okay? Also, if we are better, we can help others to be better. All right? That's the airplane thing where you put your mask on first, and if there's somebody else with you, then but you can't, if you're not breathing well, you can't help nobody else. Okay? That's why they give that instruction. More satisfied staff and customers. That means we hang around longer. All right? Building stronger community, working toward common goals. Okay? Lasting community, benefit through all stakeholders and their buy-in. The image. How others see us and how we see ourselves. Critical parts of this process. Now, since we don't have a lot of time, we're going to flip the script. Now we're going to do just the opposite. Take a moment and come up. So if we don't do anything, if we stay as we are, and we don't make any effort, what are the negative consequences for us if we don't make these efforts? Take a few moments, write them down, and then as soon as you're able, bring somebody up here. Let's put it on the board. All right, go. Right along. All right, so we have here, so we venture into nothing. We just say, hey, listen, this whole common ground process, this whole diversity stuff, blow it out of your ear, John. Forget that. So where do we find ourselves? Well, unsatisfied clients and employees, no trust because we're not eating enough spicy food. There's some folks we got to work with here, okay? Okay. Poor health outcomes because we're not meeting our promise in that regard, right? We have conflict. Okay. Now, let me say this. In a diverse place, you're going to have conflict. The question isn't, do we have conflict? The question is, what do we do about it? What do we do with it? How do we handle the conversations that even challenge us? Because diversity, again, it doesn't demand consensus. It may create more conflict among us. The question is, how do we manage it? How do we navigate it? How do we assess what the conflict is? How do we adjust to how we think about it? And how do we act in a different way that keeps us moving forward as opposed to at odds with one another? Okay? And so let me say this. One of the things we always have to process now that times have changed and so forth is how we deal with things that people say to us that we don't like. We're in a generation now where communication is not so interpersonal anymore. We're texting stuff, we're emailing stuff, and let me just ask you a question. Is it possible to misinterpret what someone has said in a text message or in an email? Also, email is for cowards. Something they'll say, won't say to somebody face to face, they'll say over email. And then leave it out there. The great thing for you is that they wrote it down. And now you can, that's the challenge there. How do we deal with these things when people don't want to communicate forthrightly? They'd rather hide behind the screen. It creates conflict. So be careful when you get that, somebody to hit the hot button, and that sucker. I got some, I got something for him. That sucker, I got something for them right now. Be careful, because what you put out, you won't be able to take back. You're tracking with me here? You want to be careful, all right? And so even if your intention was not ill, but what you said and the way it was interpreted was, well, you get it. You get the picture. So be careful. You pick it up, put it down. Put your fingers on the keyboard, take your fingers off the keyboard, okay? This whole idea of disengaged employees. Listen, when we take ownership of the thing we're doing and the way we're doing it, we want people to be involved. We want people paying attention. We want that buy-in that we were talking about. And so we want to be careful that people buy in, but it helps people to know what they're doing and why so they can be engaged. All right? And so if you're leading people and so forth, again, try to do your best to bring them together around what the mission is. Also, we have a lack of cohesiveness. That means we're not together. And so let's take the time. If anybody here lead any meetings at all? Anybody here? You're part of a lot of meetings? One of the things I try to tell people all the time is that we have people we talk about diversity. We have people who are task-oriented and people who are relationship-oriented. What does that mean? Well, we come into the meeting, it's all about what we're supposed to accomplish. Okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. However, what we're doing it with real live human beings. And so you know the old saying I just made up, life happens. So people come into the room. We got a 1 o'clock meeting. We're going to be out here by 2 o'clock. First 5 minutes of the meeting, first 3 minutes of the meeting. So how's everybody doing? There are any issues we need to address? Because if we jump right into the agenda, somebody may be thinking about what life and the other things. Let's kind of defuse some things first. Any issues we need to bring up at the beginning? Anything going on? Let's get that out of the way. Let's address it. Now, can we get the rest of the agenda done in 50 minutes? We should be able to, or if not shorter time. So let's remember we're working with live human beings, people with emotions and feelings and life and all those kinds of things. And though I may be a taskmaster, I understand now at least I should care at least a little bit about the people in my meeting for just a few moments at least. Okay, you think that would help a meeting? It would. All right, an increase in illnesses. We don't want that. A lack of harmony. And we got a lot of singers here, so harmony is important. Stop it, John. All right. Decrease our value to the community. We don't want that. And of course, feeling invisible, isolated, and alone. And that's the challenging part. You can be in a group and still feel alone. We want that camaraderie. So here it is, friends. Keep your eyes open. You see people around here. Should we care about each other in the workplace? I mean, come on, let me ask. Should we care about one another? I mean, so as we see somebody walking around, listen, we're not here to fix everybody's problem and get in everybody's business. But how many of you today, even this morning, had somebody say to you, hey, how's it going? How's it going? Anybody? How many of you said to somebody, hey, how's it going? Okay, here's a question. Who really wanted to know? Now we say it, but who really wants to know? So when you ask me, hey, how's it going? Oh, I'm glad you asked. Glad you asked. I see you got something in your hand. You might well put that down because we're about to have a conversation. It's one thing to ask. I think I shut myself down here. It's one thing to ask. It's another thing to totally want to know. Just for a few moments, okay? Because again, life happens and we're here from all walks of life. And we want that person to understand this is a community of people who care about one another. It starts here and then it filters beyond. All right? Good stuff. All right, last couple of things. What does it take to find common ground? You see it there? A willingness, back to willingness again, a willingness to engage. But John, I don't really like them. Well, you know what? They don't like you either. But hey, look, we got to start somewhere. An openness to the process. Again, I'm not saying all these things are easy, because moving from unfamiliar to familiar, moving from stranger to familiar, challenging process. Challenging process. You think it's all comfortable? You think it's all things that make me feel good? It's not. So as we talk about this, we have a desire to understand. Listen, sometimes it just means I've had to learn that it's about my desire and my willingness to understand there's something different than me. And actually, it's not going to hurt me to know it. When I learned French, I realized it didn't hurt my English. Huh? When I learned French, it didn't hurt my English. It didn't mean I spoke English any worse. Now I had another language. When I learned some Latin, okay, didn't hurt my English. And so as we begin to expand, we have a desire to understand the opportunity to show respect. And that is an opportunity. The ability to overcome differences, as opposed to let them just be differences hanging in the wind. Listen, we can be better. Some of us can take the higher ground. Some people just want to create chaos and conflict. And listen, that doesn't have to be you. We can work this out. Matter of fact, in order to keep our promises, we got to work it out. Okay? And then, of course, the privilege we have to work together. And I would say, friends, that's the one thing we don't see. It is an honor from day to day to be able to be in a room full of people like this, the opportunity to work together, the opportunity to get to know one another, if indeed that's the case. Yours truly, at 32, was laid up in a hospital bed for 4 days with the onset of a heart attack. And so I say that to say every day and every opportunity I get to do this kind of thing is a privilege, an honor to stand before you and be able to look in your eyes and engage you this way. I'm around people. I'm alive. Didn't have to be that way after those 4 days, but it turned out differently. And so every day is a day that I count a privilege, and the opportunity that you have to get to know all these beautiful people and to not take this for granted. I am asking you to take full advantage of this privilege and work together better. All right? 4 things to avoid. Take a look. First is stereotypes. Be careful about the information you have. Do your best to try to make sure it's accurate. I grew up thinking that everybody who was not like me was from Days of Our Lives. Thank goodness I found out there was different information. Okay? Except the people at the private school, they were just like them. Be careful about your prejudgments. All right? I realized I had a problem with people with tattoos, or overly tattooed people, not just one tattoo on the ankle or whatever, but it's somebody who just kind of had these massive tattoos all over them. It just kind of grossed me out, and I didn't understand why. Okay? And so I had a young man who came down maybe a few months ago. He wanted to meet with me at my church, and he said, Mr. Harris, I'd like to meet with you. And he came in, and he was a young guy. He had pierced, lip was pierced, and nose was pierced, and tattoos all over the place. And I was like, ooh, ooh. And then we had the best conversation. The best. It was the best thing I did all day was meet with him. It was beautiful. But I had to overcome the thing that was my barrier. And when I pushed that aside, I was able now to engage and have really a great time. And so we ask ourselves, what are the things that cause me to prejudge people? Got to be careful. Got to be careful. Watch your assumptions. You think that somebody can or cannot do a certain thing a certain way because of what they look like, what they act like, what I know about them. Okay, kind of lapse into one of the others, but be careful about the things you assume. And lastly, watch your microaggressions. You say, well, what is that? Well, the best way I can describe it is if you have a young child and they come to you and they want to show you a picture. Hey, mommy, daddy, look. And you're watching a Husker game or whatever. And you never turn to look at what they're trying to show you. Have you communicated a message? Indeed, you have. And what is the message? You're not important. And so that we do that in the workplace as well. If I've called these folks together and the only thing I do is talk to this side of the room, what does this side of the room understand about our conversation? They're not involved. And so we do these things even subtly to take people from a place of value to a place of lesser value. That's what we have to be careful about. So if you're talking to 2 people, talk to 2 people, not just one person. If you've called someone into your office, all right, and you're working on your computer, at least acknowledge that they're in the doorway. Okay? At least acknowledge it. And now say, I'll be right with you. Now come on in. Or come on in, let me finish. Or hang up the phone and get to them. All right? Be careful about those sometimes unconscious things that we do. Subtle, yet biting. Okay? Now, here's your homework. Yep, you got homework. One of the things I want you to do, based on what you've heard here today, I want you to ask yourself, what one thing will I start doing to find common ground? What one thing will I stop doing that has hindered me in that regard? If you're already moving in that direction, what thing will I continue to do? And to help others, what thing will I encourage others to do? Okay? Little homework for you there. So you can use this as your own personal action plan to say, I'm going to start doing this more. Matter of fact, if you would, I'm over time, so I'm going to stop. All right, so that's your homework there. All right? I'm out of slides. I'm done. You guys are awesome. Hey, listen, thank you for your service to this community, this city and this community. Keep up the great work, and let's keep becoming more familiar. All right? God bless. Thank you.